Welcome back. I'm MalaniKai. So glad you've been sticking around on the MalaniKai show. Now, we were talking about the beginning of the show leading up to now, some very heavy topics. My heart is heavy, but it is Black History Month, African American History Month, whatever you want to call it. My guest who is on the show, I'm so excited to have him. He's like me. He doesn't care if it's Black history, African American history. Herman Cain. Now, many of you probably hear Herman Cain on the radio here at WSB Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. until noon. Most of my generation, I'm that 40s generation. Most of them heard about Herman Cain when he ran for president in the year 2012, but not me. Prior to that, I knew who Herman Cain was because it was the early 90s. I was fresh out of college and I was researching the story for some radio show, and it was about healthcare. President Bill Clinton had decided that he wanted to roll out this new healthcare reform. Turned on the television and I saw a black man with glasses on, and it was a town hall, and Bill Clinton was rolling this out, and there was Herman Cain, and he, in his nice Southern charm, praised Bill Clinton for making it a national issue, and then suddenly he broke it down. He broke it down like only Herman Cain could break it down. He was talking about numbers, why it would not work. And Bill Clinton said, pass the cost off to your clients. And it was mind boggling just to see this happening for me. So that's how I knew my next guest. Very, very excited to have him on the show. I'm African American. He's African American or Black or whatever you want to call it. We really don't care. It's just exciting to be here on WSB and to have him on the show. So he is a Black American who is making a difference. We'll talk about why he's making a difference and being a graduate of an HBCU. Mr. Herman Cain, welcome to the MalaniKai show.
You make me want to say, "Aw, shucks." What a nice introduction, MalaniKai. I'm happy to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cain. It's Black History Month, and I heard you on a recent show talk about your visit to the White House. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And you were naming all of these great African Americans or Blacks, however you want to say it, like you. It doesn't matter to me. But you ran into some prominent African Americans there, and while you were talking, I thought, you know what? Herman Cain is a prominent African American. And because we are in African American or Black History Month, I want to go back, trace your roots back to the Jim Crow South. I want to dispel some rumors that I've heard about you. Many people that I've talked to believe that you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth and that you cannot even relate to the struggles of African Americans. How true is that?
It is totally not true. I was born with no spoon in my mouth. My mother was a domestic worker. My father worked 3 jobs at one point as a barber, a janitor, and a chauffeur. And I can remember when we lived in what I called a half a house. It was like a shotgun house, 3 rooms on one side, 3 rooms on the other side. We lived on one side of the house. That was because that was all we could afford. And a lot of people want to accuse me of being born with a silver spoon in my mouth because of the success that I have been blessed with. It didn't happen overnight. And no, I didn't come from a family that put me on a path to instant success. No, I did it the old-fashioned way. I worked for it with the grace of God.
You're listening to the MalaniKai show. We're talking to Herman Cain, who can be heard here locally on WSB Monday through Friday, actually national. You can hear him however you want via the app. Now, that's interesting to me because another thing a lot of people don't know about you is after you graduated, spent time in Memphis and Atlanta, you graduated from high school, you made the decision, this is going to shock a lot of people that I know who I had to force to listen to this show, you went to an HBCU, historically Black college university. How did you end up at Morehouse?
It's real simple. 2 reasons. First, my high school math teacher, who's one of the people that I admired, he's deceased now, all through my career, suggested that I go to Morehouse. I didn't come up from a family that had gone to college. In fact, I was one of the first in my family to even go to college along with my brother. And Mr. Johnson said in his southern drawl, Herman Cain, you need to go on to college. I said, why? It needs to help train your brain, and you can be whatever you want to be. This is how you talk. You can be whatever you want to be, but you might have to work a little longer, and you might have to work a little harder. And then the second reason that I chose Morehouse College was because I could afford it. I got a tuition scholarship my first year at Morehouse, and I commuted from home because I couldn't afford to stay on campus. That's how I ended up going to Morehouse rather than some of these other schools that really were making me some lucrative offers.
You're listening to the MalaniKai Show, talking to Herman Cain. Speaking of HBCUs, it is Black History Month. A lot of these HBCUs are struggling. Can you please, in your a way that only you can do, tell me why Blacks and African Americans like you, I don't care what you call yourselves, why don't we send some of our best athletes and academic minds to HBCUs?
First, let me give you a little bit of background in history. I used to serve on the board of trustees for Morehouse College. I also served on the board of Creighton University out of Omaha, Nebraska when I lived there. So I have seen colleges and universities operate close up and personal because of the decisions that we've had to make. If you look at HBCUs, the questions about the athletes are easy. It's called money. Some of these big schools, if you're a good athlete or a great athlete, they can provide very lucrative scholarships and on-campus accommodations for you versus some of the HBCUs. In terms of why so many of the HBCUs are struggling, I attribute it to, one, mismanagement. Not all of them. I'm not indicting all HBCUs because some of them are run really, really well. And secondly, you have to constantly raise money to be able to support the schools, the faculty, and some of them have endowed chairs, and the list goes on. And if you don't have the relationships with people that have money that you have developed over the years, it's going to be hard for you to get the money in order to help keep the students' tuition and expenses down. That's why some of them are struggling. And in order for them to overcome that, they're going to have to become more relationship minded. When I was on the board of trustees at Creighton University, everybody on that board had a Rolodex and a list of relationships with people with money that would choke a horse. But when I served on a board at Morehouse, well, not everybody had those kind of Rolodexes that could choke a horse. And so as a result, a lot of it fell on the president of the college. They can overcome it, but they're going to have to be relationship driven.
Interesting you said that as we get ready to wrap up, because as you know, you probably know, Booker T. Washington had a lot of relationships with some of the wealthiest white people, from oil magnates to he had these white people during that era funding his particular ventures. But now, Mr. Herman Cain, I'm going to have to give you your own rapid fire because Shani B's looking at me 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 2. So rapid fire, as an African American conservative during Black History Month, is Donald Trump racist?
Donald Trump doesn't have a racist bone in his body. I have known him for years. And if you had been at that reception honoring Black History Month at the White House yesterday with Donald Trump, as I was there, and saw nearly 600 black people there, many of them work in his administration. No, he doesn't have a racist bone in his body.
Rapid fire with Herman Cain. I get to do this. He wants to replace food stamps with food boxes. That's considered racist. What are your thoughts as a businessman?
It is not racist. It is, one, a way to reduce the cost and eliminate a lot of the abuse that a lot of people are basically doing with some of the EBT cards. It's not racist. And secondly, why should people not want to get off of food stamps? It's supposed to be a bridge to you being able to take care of yourself. So it's not racist. This is just how people who are satisfied with the status quo want to continue to maintain the status quo. Last
rapid fire question. I feel good that I can ask you a rapid fire. I saw your girl, Omarosa. I saw an article you wrote about her on HermanCain.com. Your thoughts on Omarosa being in the White House, out of the White House? Who knows what she's doing? What are your thoughts on Omarosa?
One of my writers wrote that article, but
Okay.
he was dead on. But that's okay. A lot of people attribute some of those commentaries to me, and that's okay because the two writers that I have, we have a very good chemistry when we write about things, and they've never been embarrassed by anything that I have written, and I've never been embarrassed by anything that they have written. Omarosa, I did not know her well, but I did ask someone recently when I was attending a briefing in Washington, D.C., and I said, why did Omarosa leave? And I got to be honest with you. This person who shall remain anonymous, as they now use a lot in the media, said, well, she really had a hard time getting along with a lot of people. It's back to relationships, back to relationships.
Herman Cain, you have made my evening here on WSB. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. I know where people can reach you, HermanCain.com. Now, I know
Yes.
that you have other writers. They also can listen to you live Monday through Friday, 11 to noon. You're doing a great work. I have a lot more to say about you, and I'm going to say that after I let you go because Shani B is staring me down, and you know how that is when Shani B stares you down. Thank you so much. We look forward to your shows. We look forward to your commentaries. And we're just going to look to see, as I heard Shani B said, if you're going to get that 10th job or not, or are you going to stay at 9 jobs? Herman Cain, thank you so much.
MalaniKai, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
And Shani B always looking at me. He's like, okay, I said you can have 2 minutes with Herman Cain. 10 minutes, you're going over. All right, Shani B, I'm out of it. So Herman Cain, ladies and gentlemen, he reminds me of my father. And my father came from, I say this, and he came from really nothing. He was born in the South. And as a lot of African Americans, his family migrated to Philadelphia. My father was born and raised the Reverend John Massey Jr. He was born in the South, raised in Philadelphia. He was a high school dropout, functionally illiterate until he met my mother, who came from one of those sophisticated families. And I'm telling you this because people always, in the African, especially, it's Black History Month, they look at me like I am crazy because I'm not a Democrat. Because do you know the little dirty secret in the African American community? Born Black, you're technically supposed to be a Democrat. I don't know where that started because traditionally back in the days of Booker T. Washington and back in the days of the Republican Party, African Americans were Republicans for the most part. It was the Republican Party that helped African Americans. But we're going to talk a little bit about that because it intrigues people. It actually intrigues me that I'm like an outcast in the African American community because I'm considered a conservative or I'm not a Democrat. I did not vote for President Barack Hussein Obama. I'll tell you why as we wrap up about Black History Month. You're listening to the MalaniKai Show. We're live on News 95.5 and AM 750 WSB.